Hi, welcome to the podcast, Ease into Clarity. I'm Dr. Divi, family doctor turned intuitive coach, and I'm here to help you. In this podcast, we will learn mental techniques, emotional techniques, and spiritual techniques to change daily problems. So maybe it's your husband, your boss, your coworker, your kids, they're driving you crazy. You can email me any of your questions, and I will use all the techniques I've learned over the years and help you. Grab your hot chocolate and make sure to subscribe. We'll see you soon. Ciao. Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Dr. Divi's podcast, Ease into Clarity. So this topic is called unworthiness, shame, and guilt, and how to heal them. Big one, and I'm going to try to do it all in 10 or 15 minutes. So let's play together. Go ahead and close your eyes. And if you're driving, obviously don't close your eyes. Just take a few breaths in and out. Slow breath in, long breath out. Deep breath in, slow breath out. And just be present. Inhale and exhale. Belly rises and belly falls. Take a few more slow, deep breaths in and long, deep breaths out. On the next few, see if you can make the exhales a little bit longer than the inhales. So inhale maybe for the count of 4. Exhale maybe for the count of 5. And after 4 or 5 cycles of that, whenever you're ready, gently open your eyes, coming back. Welcome back. So in this podcast, I'm going to use some visuals. Now, I know my podcast channel doesn't have visuals, and you're probably driving in your car listening to this. So I'll describe it with my hands. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see it when I hit share screen. But today we're going to be talking about unworthiness, shame, and guilt. But the first one we're going to talk about is unworthiness. Because shame and guilt are offshoots, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. When I first got into self-development, I got into yoga when I was like 29, 30. I was quite ill, as you may know from my TEDx talk, and got into yoga by accident. And then about a year or two later, I ended up in my first self-development class. I was going through marital separation, and I felt like my life was falling apart. Prior to that, my entire life was geared towards becoming a doctor. You may have heard the story. I was about 5 years old. I don't know if I was told I was going to become a doctor or I decided I was going to become a doctor. Who knows? But from that age of about 5 or 6, I was beeline to be a doctor. So I was 19 years old and I got into medical school. So it doesn't shock anyone when I tell them I fell apart when I was 28. I got married when I was 28 as well to a man I had met in my residency, a great guy. But a year after we got married, 28, 29, is when I fell apart. So it shouldn't shock anybody because my whole life was very much geared towards one thing. And then I moved out west and I thought I had everything in the world, love of my life, everything, but had not worked once on my emotions. In that first self-development class I took, I discovered through the self-development course that one of my main stories in my head was, I'm not good enough. Now, please remember, this is pre-internet, pre-social media. And I think internet was just coming out, but correct me, I could be wrong about that. But this is way before social media. And I had never heard of the concept of I'm not good enough. I'd never heard of it. And I was, late 20s, early 30s, discovering that I had this thought in my head and seeing that it ran so many areas of my life, from my work to exercise to body image. And I didn't really realize it. And then when I became consciously aware of it, and this self-development course I was taking did not talk about spirit at all. It was all mind-based, which was fine. But I literally, and I'm not joking or lying when I say this, I literally cried for 7 days almost straight. I would stop crying when I would go to work. Then I would tear up sometimes at work, and then I'd come home and cry again. And this feeling of feeling not good enough that I had no idea was running my show was woken up in me, and I was completely shocked. So that unworthiness thing is something that we never want to look at and kind of sits back here. And that was when I was in my early 30s, and I'm a little bit older now. And as you know, I've worked as an intuitive coach for over 13 years and as a physician prior to that, and yoga teacher prior to that. And what I've discovered is everyone has it. It might sound silly. You probably are like, yeah, Divi, everyone has it. I didn't know that. And I also didn't know that everyone has it to a large degree. But how it shows up for each person is different. For somebody else, their unworthiness voice in their head might make them work 900 hours a day. Because of the unconscious worthiness, they might think they have to pick up 70 shifts a week. Another person who feels unworthy might show up as a different way, that they currently are, working in a job that doesn't serve them. Somebody else's unworthiness could cause them to be morbidly obese. Somebody else's unworthiness could cause them to be bone skin anorexic. Another person who feels unworthy might cause them to have multiple affairs. So what I'm trying to show you is this unworthiness dialogue shows up in so many different ways in our lives, not just in one. And yes, I've seen the unworthiness thing be a big part of illnesses, massive part of illnesses. What the heck do we do with it? So the unworthiness thing then leads to shame and guilt, which I will get to. But I would love you to know before you even get to shame and guilt that you have it. If you have shame and guilt, you have unworthiness. Just accept it. The next thing I want you to know, take a breath, is that there's actually two parts of us. And you may have heard me say this before. We have the spirit, and then we have the ego. But the spirit is your true essence. The ego is what A Course in Miracles calls the false reality of who you are. And you're like, yeah, sure, Divi, prove it to me. So yeah, let's prove it to you. Have you ever gone to a yoga class and felt better after? Have you ever sat and meditated and felt better after? Have you ever had your mind spinning and go shoot a hoop or go for a run and felt better after? Have you ever gone in nature and felt better after? You're like, yeah, Divi, yeah, whatever, nature, shooting a hoop, whatever, that's going to happen because of serotonin. No. Sure, serotonin, sure, dopamine, all those great things. But the reason those hormones work is because this other part you called your spirit actually gets activated in your body. And then that gets a bit bigger and the ego gets a bit quieter. You probably had the experience that you're like spinning in your mind and you've scrolled social media and you found a post and it just like calms you down. Or you listen to a podcast and it literally changes how you think. That is very common. How is that? Because that social media post, that podcast, it wakes up our true self, which is our spirit. Now, here's the other thing that's hard for us to understand, is that is actually your true essence. That is the part of you that is unlimited in power, unlimited in wealth, infinitely capable, infinite potential. You've got it all. You've got it all. And the ego is a separated self who doesn't believe you have that. The ego is the part of you who's like, nope, you're not that. The ego one who says, work harder. The ego is the false self that says you're not spirit. That's basically the ego. And the ego has a million ways to say it to you. But because nature, meditation, yoga, going for a workout actually help, makes you start to realize that there is spirit inside of you. It is understanding that you have the capability to connect with a truth that is outside your mind, a truth that is in your heart, a truth that's in your soul. And I've said this before in other podcasts, but if the word spirit bothers you, change it to love. I might use the word love, God, spirit, the divine, the universe interchangeably. But love, spirit, the divine loves you unconditionally to the moon and back. And in your spirit self, you are completely lovable, unbelievably powerful, and truly love. And there's no one in your life that spirit does not love. And that might sound hard for you to understand, but there's no one in your life that spirit does not love. The ego, on the other hand, it's got other stories. So when you start to understand that there's two parts of you, then you can start to understand that the part of you that thinks you're not worthy is the ego, and that is it. It is really that simple. The ego is not even a real thing. Your heart's a real thing. The heart energy has been studied by heart math. The heart is a real thing. The ego is not really real. The ego is a mental construct. So you have these two parts inside of you, the ego and spirit, and the ego's job is to block the spirit, and that's it. But the spirit is actually louder than the ego, but you just have to get to know the ego. And that's really the key. So if you have this unworthiness conversation in your brain, you have to ask yourself, who am I identifying as? Okay. So I'm going to show you 3 different pie charts because if you don't know, I'm incredibly visual. And I know a lot of podcast listeners are just listening to this in their car up for a drive and you don't see the visual. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see the visual. So I'm going to show you 3 different visuals and 3 ways of identifying yourself. For the first visual is this. Right now, if you're listening to this, I'm showing a pie chart and I want you to imagine a pie chart with one like a pizza pie chart, but only one piece of the pizza is highlighted. So the whole pizza that's not cut, let's describe that as the ego, and the one piece of pizza is spirit. So when you're more in the ego, more in fear, more in overwhelm, more in anger, more in blame, you're more in the bigger pie piece. That's all. Spirit is there, but it's a tiny little piece, but it doesn't go away. You will never, ever, 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 ever be completely ego, ever, ever. Because as long as you can breathe in your heartbeat, spirit's inside of you. So there's one picture that I'm showing on the screen where the majority of it is the ego. Now, here's the deal, is I can flip that. Is I can make the majority spirit. So I've scrolled down. You can see in this picture, spirit's bigger than the ego. So in this, I didn't color code it correctly, but that's okay. Spirit is the bigger piece of the pie, and the ego is a smaller piece of the pie. So that's possible. And here's and in this picture where spirit's the bigger piece and the ego is the very tiny pizza piece, when you're feeling like this, you're holding more love. You're holding more space. You're more expansive. Now, but who are you truly? The ego doesn't exist. That little piece of pie doesn't exist. So my last picture, who you truly are, the entire pizza pie, you're just spirit. So close your eyes if you can for a minute. Just take a few breaths. Imagine a pizza pie that was only spirit. All you are is spirit. There's no little piece in there that says you're the ego. You are only spirit. You are only love. You're only connection. You are only hope, your own peace. So 3 really simple steps to start to unravel unworthiness. Number 1, identify which pie chart am I looking at? Am I more in the ego and spirit is here, but it's just tinier? Am I more in spirit, but I know the ego is there because it's going to come in and tell me to be scared? Or am I all in spirit? How do you identify? And the more you identify in spirit, hey, the easier it gets. Step 1, what pie piece I am. Step 2, forgive yourself for ever thinking that you were separate from spirit. Forgive yourself. Because there is a massive energy that runs through your body. There's an energy that runs me. There's an energy that is who I am, not just this crazy concoction ego part of me. And the third part of it is practice seeing spirit in others. So I walk around some days and I walk around and I look at people and I go, that person's love, that person's love, that person's love. Or I sometimes say it differently. That person's a child of God, that person's a child of God, that person's a child of God. If you've ever seen the infinity sign, what I do to anybody else, I do to myself. So if I see you as the divine, I see me as the divine. If I see you as love, I see me as love. So the more I do it out, the more it comes back to me. So practice seeing what pie shape you're in. And I talked about forgiveness and then also like practice it. And I'm going to add a couple other tools to this list. Never make your pie piece wrong. So yesterday, the ego for me was screaming and resentment and anger. But I knew while it was happening, it was like, okay, this is just happening. I don't have to identify it, but I let myself feel it. And I could see it was happening. In the Abraham Hicks work, they call that step 5 moment. But if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. I was just seeing, oh yeah, there's a part of me. What a lot of us do is we look at the ego and go, okay, let's try to get rid of it. That's impossible. Just know it's there and just look at it. Go, yeah, there you are. And the more you see yourself as the spirit, the more the pie gets taken over. If you acknowledge that it's there, it's not going to control you. Don't ignore it. And then again, forgiveness. Forgiveness for that piece, for forgetting that it's spirit. So that's how I work with unworthiness. Now, really quickly, not quickly, we'll jump to guilt and shame. So guilt and shame is only there if you're identifying as the ego. I'll say that 10 more times. Guilt and shame is only there if you identify as the separated self. So I only feel shameful that I've done something wrong. Oh my God, I'm such a bad person. If I identify as the ego, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, just so you know. And same with guilt. I'm a bad mother because I'm not home with my child. Who am I identifying as? I was identifying as a separated self, not knowing that in this moment, my heart, which is my spirit, can send infinite love to my son all the time. I don't have to be physically there. I can send that love. But the more we're addicted to the ego, the more the guilt is going to come in. So if you've got a lot of guilt and shame, that should tell you right there that you're identified as a separate self. And that's where you need to practice a lot of forgiveness to say, okay, no, I don't identify as this, and reframe those thoughts that make you feel guilty. Because guilt is just an addiction. It's an addiction to unworthiness. It's an addiction to putting yourself down. It's an addiction to not seeing yourself as the true higher self, the divine child of God that you're meant to be. Take a few breaths with that. It's just an addiction to a thought process. The last few things I'll say. when it comes to shame, because I know when I teach this, people go, but yeah, Divi, if I give up my shame, then I'm going to be a bad person and cut people off in traffic. Actually not true. If you identify as spirit and identify as love, human nature, when it comes to just being in spirit, you'll only be of love to each other. You won't do those things that you're afraid of doing. You will be love with each other. If you identify in love, everything starts to change. So don't worry about, not studying and not doing something right if you disidentify with the shame. In fact, human nature is such that you will do loving things, do kind things. So just something to play with. Take a second, close your eyes, and take a few breaths. Remembering that shame, guilt, and unworthiness is a choice. Playing with those pie charts, identifying yourself as the divine, more and more and more. I will see you super soon. Sending you lots of love, and thank you for listening to the podcast. If you haven't already subscribed, hit subscribe, and feel free to send me some questions to easeintoclarity@gmail.com. That helps me create more content, though I've got so much content from the thousands and thousands of clients I've worked with. Big love. Thank you so much for joining me in this podcast, Ease into Clarity. It is such a joy, pleasure, and honor to be in your living room. What I would love is if you follow me on Instagram, drdivi, or go to my website, drdivi.com, or write a review. That would be even more amazing. Thank you. If you really enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share it with friends, family. Tell them to follow me, because I think the more of us that listen to the fact that each of us can start to shift, each of us can shift mental things, emotional things, spiritual shift, to shift our daily reality. When more and more of us do it, we get a better planet. We get more love. We get more happiness. We get more joy. So I'd love it if you followed. I'd love it if you shared this, because it would be such a joy and an honor. And again, if you have a question, guess what? I'm here for you. So send me an email, easeintoclarity@gmail.com. And as they come in, I will answer them in podcasts that are subsequent, whether it be your boss, your relationship, your husband, whatever. That's what I'm here for. Because the more of us that learn really simple mental techniques, really simple spiritual techniques, we change the physical reality we live in. Pretty soon we have more peace, more ease, more joy trickling across the whole world. Remember, there's a spiritual solution for every problem. Thank you for joining me. Namaste.